The 16th Congressional District has been an effective race in Erie, Pennsylvania, as students at Mercyhurst University have created a simulated race based off the election. On November 28th, a rally was held for the election created by Maddie Weitz. Maddie Weitz is a young female student who is simulating the candidate of Mike Kelly, who won the actual 16th Congressional race. I interviewed Maddie Weitz to get a further detail on what she stood for as a candidate in a political race. Maddie Weitz, you are competing for the 16th Congressional State in the House of Representatives. Tell me a little bit about your campaign.
Sure. So I am currently the incumbent running to re-represent the 16th District of Pennsylvania. We have a lot of momentum thus far. We've made a lot of progress, and that's kind of what motivates me to run and continue to fight for my constituents. A lot of my policies are towards the economy, obviously bringing more jobs to Erie, as well as, reforming some of our educational system programs, as well as addressing national security concerns. Those are three big priorities of mine, but I also have taken a lot of feedback from the community and my constituents, and just trying to make Erie especially and the rest of the district a great place to be.
What do you think is the number one priority that needs to happen in Erie as soon as you are elected for office?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things, Erie is kind of going through a renaissance right now and a revitalization, and I think I really want to contribute to that. I think a big way to contribute to that is bringing more business opportunities and empowering small businesses and entrepreneurs in our area. So Erie not only is a great place to be if you already live here, but also an attractive place to move to. I also think having different educational type of opportunities such as technical schools and vocational schools can also really help us just kind of set ourselves apart for the size of city that we are. I think those two things can really help us move forward and push ourselves into a better direction. And those are kind of what I'm going to tackle first and foremost.
Okay, so let's say you talked about the economy and you talked about small businesses. Let's say, for example, that I am running a small business and I am deciding to move to Erie, Pennsylvania, and I am just starting out. How do you think your administration and your campaign managers and all that can help me out?
Sure. So we're focusing on a lot of cutting regulations, federal government regulations, that makes it harder for small businesses to actually start. So that first and foremost. And then also making the tax code simpler so it's easy to start a business and have employees that you can actually pay a living wage. Those two things are really crucial, and I think will really entice entrepreneurs that are already here to continue growing their business, as well as allowing new entrepreneurs to come to our area and set up shop.
Poverty and homelessness, two of the biggest problems that are in Erie, Pennsylvania. What do you think about that, and how do you think you can solve that problem in Erie, Pennsylvania?
Well, I think obviously one of the biggest reasons for being homeless and being in poverty is not having good jobs here in this area, especially manufacturing jobs, skilled jobs. A lot of jobs, we do have jobs in the area, but a lot of jobs are very high skilled, very not really geared towards people who are impoverished or people that are homeless.
So you're saying that jobs that require a degree such as college degree or some form of associate's degree, you're saying that some of those jobs in that area are too much for those who are in poverty and homelessness?
I don't think it's too much. I just think it's not exactly realistic for someone who is homeless and sleeping on the streets to go to an interview at Erie Insurance and get a job. It's not as viable. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but having jobs that are more accessible, we have a great, manufacturing sector, making jobs like that more diverse jobs that multiple different people, not just those with, don't get me wrong, I value a highly educated society and I value a degree, but not everyone wants to go to school, or there's some who are more suited for trades. And I think we need to bring those types of opportunity to our people, because we're kind of not doing a justice to not just the homeless, but those in poverty, those who don't want to seek a traditional route of education by getting a college degree. We're not offering those opportunities if we don't look to other jobs that those people could fill. Right.
Some parts of the economy don't really support certain schools that only require trades, plumbing, construction. What do you plan to do to improve schools like that, so that way those like that are in homelessness who don't want to go back to school can get something not simple, but something decent as a trade?
I think there's kind of a stigma around trade jobs, that they're not as good or you're not as smart if you go, to a trade school or a vocational school. I think that's completely ridiculous. I think.
How so?
Because having a highly, just because you're a plumber and you're not a college professor doesn't mean you're any less of a good worker or you're any less smart, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think you're just as, I think there's multiple types of learners. I think there's multiple types of people who have multiple different, wants and needs. Just because I want to be a politician or you want to be, a media broadcaster, that doesn't mean Joe next door wants to. He might want to be an electrician. And I think what we need to have those opportunities for people to go to college. We have great universities here. We do.
Of course.
And I value education, and I value that. I don't value that we don't have opportunities for people who don't want to go to the traditional route. I don't think we're doing a justice to our community by saying you only have college and that's it. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I value education, but I think you can also be highly educated by going to a trade school or a vocational school, and I think we need to bring more of those opportunities, as well as already using what we have so far and strengthening our universities here as well.
Okay, let's get a little bit more controversial here in terms of safety and schools, in terms of high school, middle school, and elementary school. Do you think teachers should be armed?
I do not.
Why not?
Well, first of all, I don't see how that's possible viably. Just our schools don't even have enough funding as it is for materials, let alone buying guns for teachers. I don't see any, average second grade teacher who, she signed up for, teaching your students and giving them the skills and the knowledge that they need to move forward. She didn't sign up for, firearms training.
Of course.
So I just think that's kind of ridiculous. I think that's not really a great solution to a problem that we need to be addressing.
How would you feel if the president would come to you and say that you should try to get people in Erie to arm guns? How would you try to confront him about this situation? Because I remember my teachers from when I was in elementary school. I went to Wexford Elementary School in Pine Richland, Pennsylvania, and it was a really great elementary school. And most of my teachers that were female teachers, I never even thought about having them carry, possess any sort of firearms, for protection or anything like that. So my question is, if the president were to confront you about this, what would you do?
If the president were going to come to me and
say
lobby,
that, hey, you need to put these teachers armed. You need to give them training.
Right. I mean, just because I'm a Republican, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, with the Republicans and the party today. I think, like I said, I don't agree with Trump for everything that he does, and I don't think I would agree with him if he came here and told me, hey, this is what has to happen. I think there'd be a huge backlash in Congress that I don't think that would, even if he did propose that. I think bipartisan on both sides, I think Democrats and Republicans would both just be like, all right, no, we're not willing to support that, even if you put that forth. Because we do have the power to say no in numbers to him.
Okay, so what do you think we should do to help out gun control? There's always that middle background that should happen in terms of that. What do you think we should do to find that middle background?
So I think there's a lot we can do, and a lot that has been going on, but we haven't really, addressed the root problems. I think in terms of schools and school safety, we need to make sure our schools are secure and safe. So in that sense, having more funding for security measures like metal detectors, things like that. We also, across the country, there's not a uniform policy where if you see a student who could be a possible threat, or you see, you know, dangerous misbehavior, a lot of the times students as well as faculty can't report that to even their parents or law enforcement, which I think kind of needs to change. I also believe that we need more education in not just our school, but our communities. People who have guns need to know how to use them properly, and make sure that people who don't know how to use guns or are going to use guns for the wrong purpose, that they're properly stored so people can't have access to them, as well as students, you know, knowing that guns are not toys. They're, you know, they're a huge deal. Yeah,
they're a huge responsibility.
They're a responsibility.
Something that should not be taken lightly to the
Exactly.
highest degree, because we have seen in these times that guns, not necessarily guns, but people misusing guns.
Yes. And I think that's
very
another
hard
kind of
damage.
component. There's not enough background checks. I'm all for law-abiding citizens having access to guns, as long as they're law-abiding citizens. I think that's the crucial part to it.
Of course, a registered gun is a
Second
registered
Amendment
gun.
protects our guns, and I'm all for, if you want to use a gun in the right way, fine. But I think our background checks need to make sure that criminals are not getting guns, as well as not just criminals in the sense of like committed like a felony or abusers, obviously not, but also those who have records of, you know, mental illness, more background checks as far as that, because currently we don't have any mental illness background or information on background checks, which could really be useful considering all the mass shootings that happen today. A lot of people that have committed mass violence do have backgrounds of serious mental health issues.
And I'm glad you brought up background checks. I'm glad you brought up background checks. What do you think about background checks in terms of the police force and how we should upgrade our background checks for certain police officers? Because in these times, obviously times were worse back then, but in these times, African Americans, specific African Americans, have been brutalized, have been killed and shot by police officers who have been misinterpreted, you know, who have misinterpreted them as criminals and as anything else except law-abiding citizens.
Right.
I think the term I'm looking for is shoot first and ask questions later. And some police officers, I hate to say it, but they don't like blacks. They don't. How do you think that with the background checks upgraded that you're talking about will go into law enforcement in terms of not just African Americans, but all races, you know, but all races. But I'm just saying that because I'm an African American male myself. I do see what goes on the news. I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
I see what's going on out in the world, you know. So just how do you think about that?
Right. So I see exactly what you're seeing, and I think it is a problem. In terms of background checks for police, I think obviously they can't be excluded from the background checks that I propose. As far as trying to see if those background checks would like prove if they're, I guess, racist or, you know, are more likely to
Psychologically turned against African Americans.
Right, and I don't know how you measure that. That's the thing. So I don't know how. I would be interested in seeing how that would happen and like play out, because I think that is valuable. I don't think anyone who would, like you said, shoot first and ask later should have a gun. But again, is there, you know, mental illness background and history? If there's not, how do you have that into a background check? It's kind of, I don't know, a catch-22, because you want that to happen. I'm not entirely sure how it would, but I'm willing to, you know, look more into it. And I think a lot of reform also needs to come from the criminal justice system as well, as to what cops they are hiring and what measures they're taking to make sure their police officers are properly trained, so they're not, you know, just taking out their gun as soon as they see a young black man walking down the street.
Or female.
Right.
Or female.
Right. So I think it can kind of come from both ways. I think we need change in legislation as well as changes in practices of our criminal justice system, I think would go a long way, but I think people just need to start addressing it.
In this era of the presidency with Donald Trump, it's not just him, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, they've all attacked media such as CNN, calling them fake news, calling them all sorts of names, lying and slandering journalists like Jim Acosta, April Ryan, all those different journalists who are just trying to do their job.
Right.
What is your thought on trying to work with the media rather than fight with them constantly because of how political candidates, such as yourself, might not always like the media?
Right.
And that's okay. I understand that all, politicians, they don't like the media. They don't want to work with the media sometimes. And I understand that. That's fine. But, what's your thought? I want to see what your take
well, I
is.
think I view the media as vital. I think a lot of candidates or already elected politicians view the media in a poor light because they're afraid of what's going to come out from the media, because your job is to be unbiased and be the watchdog of the public and inform the public as to what's going on. And I think if you're really, against the media and against questions from the public or information from the public, it just shows that you're afraid of what they have to say and what the truth is about you. For me, I'm not afraid of the media. I welcome hard questions. I welcome questions that, people actually want to hear about. And I view you as not only helping kind of make sense of what's going on, but also informing the public as to what is happening in politics. And I think it's very important that the general public is informed to what's going on.
So you don't think that the media is, quote, by Donald Trump, by his administration, quote, the enemy of the people? You don't think that?
I don't. I think, like I said, I'm a Republican and I understand that Trump is a Republican, but I think he's gotten so far away from what my, at least personally, ideals of the Republican Party are, that I don't agree with that media is the enemy of the press. Not enemy of the press, enemy of the
enemy
president.
of the people.
Yeah, of the people.
Enemy of the people.
I don't see that at all. I see the media as more so helping the people make sense. Sure, does the media sometimes get things wrong? Of course. Do I get some things wrong? Of course.
Of course.
I think that's just, human. But I don't see any problems with, the media doing their job if they do their job the right way.
Finally, what is your thought about immigration? I'm asking this one because I'm sure you've seen the pictures. I'm sure you've seen the videos of children being separated from their families, their mothers, their fathers, uncles, aunts, whoever they're living with. And it's a terrible thing. And we really need to figure out, this is obviously the wrong way, it's wrong to the highest degree.
Right.
But there obviously has to be ways for immigrants to come in legally. Right. Now, I do understand in some references that some immigrants might have no choice but to come in illegally due to whatever situation they're in. And that's okay too, you do what you gotta do. But just what are your thoughts on immigration?
Sure. I think we have to, like I said, work more so bipartisanly to have a comprehensive immigration reform and a standard immigration system. So it makes it easier for people who want to come here and are law-abiding people who want to, have a better life. I think I see great value in, an immigrant coming here and wanting to pursue the American dream. I think that's great. I think that's what my grandparents did, as well as many other people's ancestors did as well. I think we need to reform our system so it is easier to do that, so we don't have as many people coming in illegally. But we also need to make sure that these are our laws. We have these laws based on our Constitution. We need to uphold them. And if you're not going to come here legally after we've reformed it so it's easier to do so, if you want to, contribute to our society, then there should be actions taken against you, because, you know, these are our rules. Play by them, basically. But in terms of what's happening at the border, I think it is an injustice, and I don't think, you know, we should be ripping families apart. That's why I think we need a complete new look at our current immigration system and the policies and laws in place.
We'll see who wins this race between Isabella Morris and Maddie Weitz as voters will participate this week of finals at Mercyhurst University.